Once Eternal. I'm Ricky Ricks, and this is
Katie Lamert.
And we want to welcome you to our discussion today. You'll notice that our senior pastor is not with us for this first part of this day, and we miss him, but Katie and I are going to invite you to share in a little discussion with us. Katie, why don't you tell us what's going on today?
Yeah, we're going to have a discussion as an intro into our general rules that the United Methodist Church have, that John Wesley sort of set out as they ventured into really accountability groups. That's what we're going to talk about today. And this podcast is going to be in two parts because we just had an issue with the recording of our last podcast. And so at some point when we're done with part of this conversation, we're going to switch to our original conversation about accountability groups. But there was just an issue with the recording, so we're going to have to do something a little bit different today and go from there. So
and so we hope you'll stay for both parts of it. The first part's going to be kind of a conversation about our experiences of accountability groups, small groups, and why they matter to us. And then the second part's going to be kind of a deeper discussion about the heart of these groups. And I think both of them will be really, really fun. So let's just talk about our experiences of accountability groups and why they've been important to us and why we think they're important for the church.
Yeah, I think my first real experience probably was in high school. I joined a disciple Bible study. I've shared on this podcast before that around, 8th, 9th grade, I fell in love with the Bible and got really involved in my church. And I was invited to be part of a youth disciple Bible study led by one of our pastors. And I did that. And then I just took it all throughout. I took Disciple 1 and Disciple 2, Jesus in the Gospels, and then I helped lead Disciple 1 again as a senior in high school with some younger students. But we didn't call it an accountability group at that time. I don't even think I really understood what those words meant. But it was a really beautiful group of people that journeyed together all year, were diverse ages, and yet they were peers of mine, mostly in that group, besides the adult leaders. And we really spoke into each other and called each other out in both good and honest ways when we needed to. And sometimes that felt really good, and sometimes it felt uncomfortable, but it was needed. And then really, I didn't get involved in those in college. I was just not in a good season in college. But afterwards, when I was working for the Wesley Foundation, I helped lead a lot of small groups. And as a part of staff, we were very accountable to one another. And those really, I think, were a huge part of the fruit of the ministry of the Wesley Foundation there, where I saw a lot of fruit in my own life, just in those friendships of really being in true, deep, intimate friendship, not just one-on-one, but with a whole group of people centered on tough and challenging and rich questions and the Word of God. So a long history of really great groups that have been called a lot of different things.
Yeah. So when you started, did it feel like a have-to thing for you, or a want-to thing for you, that you were giving yourself to this process?
Probably both. I don't remember really. I mean, I chose to take Disciple my freshman year, and it was a lot of work in high school, especially. Teenagers don't like to do that kind of stuff. But later on, after college, it's something you have to commit to. It's something that you have to, I think, put your mind to doing, and know that this thing is good for you, even in the uncomfortability of it, even in the ways that it stretches and grows you. But I also think that there was a lot of joy in it, that it became something that I really wanted to do and looked forward to, and found a lot of my deep friendships came from those places. That I really think a lot of people think friendship is this natural thing, that you have this natural thing that you're, magnetized to somebody and it just clicks and you find it. But I think friendship a lot of times is just presence over time, that you spend enough time with people and you're committed to them long enough and hard enough that you're going to become friends. And you might not click on every issue, and that's not what it's about. But you love each other and you care enough about each other that you are there with them through thick and thin. And that's what I found a lot in those groups, are people that I probably never would have connected with at a coffee shop or just at the gym or wherever. But through those groups, we've done amazing life together and joyful life together. So I think those ways I've really enjoyed giving myself to them and enjoyed what I found in them in surprising ways.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And I love the part about friendship because I can think about mine, my favorite small groups, and it was with people that I never would have been bold enough to associate with, or when I first started out, I was really shy about those things. And so I was given this gift of people, and some of them have been friends of mine for, out of those 3.5 years we spent together, lifelong friends, and we still stay in touch with each other. And so it's been a good gift. Mine was, that group started out when I was a local pastor, just started out in ministry, and our district superintendent for non-Methodist, that is the pastor that guides churches and then pastors, called one day and said, "Hey, I want to invite you to be in this group. We're going to meet on Monday mornings, and then we'll go have lunch together." And I said, "Okay." When I got there, there was another guy that was a local pastor, but then there were 2 or 3 people that were in fairly large churches. In fact, one of them was in the largest church in the district, and there were men and women that were a part of it. And at first, it was a little awkward because, we decided on this covenant, and it was more spiritual growth focused than Bible study. But we said we're going to commit to pray each week. We're going to commit to read Scripture each week. Do works of charity or goodness towards people outside of our normal realm. And so we would go through and we would ask each other about those things. Oh, one of them was that we were all going to be healthy people, that we were going to exercise and eat right and stuff like that, which was a horrible thing to put into a covenant. But pretty soon it clicked, and we lost sight of it, that some of us were barely starting out and some of us were in large church, that one of them was our boss, so to speak. And it really became about people who were helping each other grow. And the cool part was when we tried to fudge that we haven't done or we didn't do exactly right, and we'd try to come up with excuses for it, that we'd get called on it. And even to the point of people would say, "Nobody asked what your excuses were. Did you do it or didn't you do it?" And I came to love that group.
Yeah.
And it really was formative for me because I was not a regular Bible reader, daily Bible reader. That wasn't part of my life. Stepping out to people outside yourself. Again, I was kind of shy, and so to know that I had to do that really helped grow me and shape my ministry. And I look back on those times, and we'd go out and to eat together afterwards. We had communion every time we got together. We did once a month we would do a mission project together. We'd rotate who got to choose the mission project. And you couldn't say you liked it or didn't like it or agreed with it or didn't agree with it when you had signed up and we were going to do this as a group. And it was really good, really good.
And I think it's important too, because everybody brings different dynamics to groups like that. And, that was a group of pastors, but I remember I think the coolest story that I remember that happened in a small group was a small group of girls, college girls, that I was helping to lead. And we were reading the passage in Acts where it talked about that everybody shared everything they had and that there was not a needy person among them. And we just asked the girls, and it was one of our first times meeting together, what needs do you have? And what gifts do you have? And, what do you need and what do you have to offer? And this one girl who was overweight, we let everybody have a chance to write everything down. And then we asked if anybody wanted to share. And some people just put their note in. It was almost like they put it in the middle of the circle and we could read it. But this one girl, she said, I don't have any self-confidence. I need to lose weight or something like that. I want to be healthy. And at the time, I love to work out. I don't love to work out as much anymore. I still do it, but not as enthusiastically. But I was doing, P90X, and I would run with people, and I had a gym membership. We all had a gym membership because you get one automatically with the college part of the tuition. And so she expressed this need or this kind of low self-confidence, self-image confidence. And there was me and this other girl that were just like, well, we'll work out with you. And so I started working out with her. And one, she became just a very good friend. And her self-confidence just, bolstered. And it was such a simple thing that I don't think we think about very often. That to be able to say, I need a friend, I need somebody to work out with, somebody to hold me accountable to go this time at this day, however many days a week. And we think so often, next week we're going to start talking about these general rules of do no harm, do good, and stay in love with God. And I think sometimes we think we have to be giving money to the poor. We have to be going on these overseas mission trips. We have to be, ending these really big systems of injustice. But sometimes you could just work out with somebody, or you could express your need, and somebody can offer their gift of friendship, their gift of presence. And I think that those kind of seemingly more simple areas of accountability are so profound, and we don't know because we don't talk about that kind of stuff. My Sunday school class, some of the women of it, most of the women in our Sunday school class met for dinner just the other week, last week, and we were sitting at dinner, and somebody at the dinner just asked a question. And from that question, kind of a more serious conversation developed and evolved. And several people were able to speak into the original person's situation, but they were also able to share from their own life things that I think they needed to share. Yeah. And we stayed there. It was maybe an hour and a half, not long. And it wasn't Sunday school. We just decided to go out for drinks. Like it, in all appearances, it was not like this holy, sanctified looking thing, but it was just a group of people that had committed to be friends with one another. And we left, and I mean, almost before I even got home, people were texting, like, I really needed that. That was such a good time. When can we do that again? And I think sometimes we over exaggerate, or we see a need that is so great we don't know what to do. But sometimes there's a need just sitting among us. We need to share what's on our heart. We've we're struggling with body image issues. We're having fights with, our family, or we're struggling with this thing with our kids, or who knows what. And we don't have a place to share because we're not in that community of people that we can trust. And so I think that, to offer that up, whether they're called Sunday school classes or accountability group or spiritual formation groups, the emphasis on community that I think John Wesley had at heart, and that the United Methodists have really tried to hold on to, this connectionalism, that started small.
Yeah.
Now we have it extending. Like, we want global connectionalism. We want to be connected to each other. But at the heart of that, John Wesley said no more than 12, because you can't really be that close with that many people. And I think that's true. I think we have to engage small and deeply and truly for really sometimes hard but beautiful things to happen.
I think you're right. And I think, as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, maybe titles small group and accountability group may even get in the way. Because what we're talking about is people decided to do life together. I mean, they decided they were going to do life together in the hope of Jesus Christ. And they came together not out of some religious purpose, but just to help each other walk closer and closer to Christ. And I think that that's always a good thing. It's funny, today at lunch, I was with somebody and we were talking about counseling, and somebody said something about, what's best counseling practices. And what I said was, my best counseling has been when I have been leaned up on the tailgate of a pickup truck after a softball game, and somebody has said something like, "Hey, Ricky," or "Hey, preacher, you got a minute?" And we just sat there and listened and shared with each other. And I think that's the intent of these groups, and it's always been.
Yeah.
How do we help each other live the best life possible in Jesus Christ?
Yeah. And you never know what, I think it's funny. One of my friends, I have led Bible studies with, she's a licensed professional counselor now. She was having trouble in graduate school and had really come to a place where she just, I think, wanted to give up. And I, the pastor, was talking to her one night. She lived across the street, and I was being very sensitive, asking her lots of questions and listening and letting her vent and all of these things. It was this very slow, pastoral conversation. And I went inside to do something, and Michael, my husband, was in the driveway with her, and I think he had his little grill out, and they were grilling something. I don't know. Anyways, I came back out at some point, and she later told this story about this really great advice she got that night. And I was puffed up. I was ready to be like, yes, I gave her this really great advice. And she said, Michael Lammert looked at me, and we called her Smiley. And he goes, "Smiley, just suck it up." And that's all he said to her. And for years, she quoted him. And I was like, what the heck? I'm the pastor giving you great pastoral advice. And my husband, who at the time was like a foreman, at the construction contracting agency that he worked for, he told you to suck it up, and that's the best pastoral advice you've ever gotten. But it was so great because it's like sometimes that is the best pastoral advice you've ever gotten, is to suck it up. And I've long said that Michael is more faithful and better than he gives himself credit for. But we all bring such different things. And sometimes you don't need somebody to listen to you vent and to let you go on and on and on. Sometimes you need somebody just to be like, hey, suck it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, we all just bring such different things, and God works through us. And that's the beauty of the community of God and the gifts of the believers. And we can try to make this sound like deep and profound, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's tailgates and driveways and grills and suck it ups. And I think that the real power is the committing to it. I think that these bands of people, that they banded themselves to this, they committed to it, and they stuck with it. I mean, they really did it through thick and thin. And there was such power and transformation in that. And it wasn't because they could suddenly quote all this scripture or preach to masses. It was because they had real people who were caring for them and who would call them on their stuff and who would tell them that they really actually had to live out the gospel, and they really actually had to work on forgiving their enemies, even when it was hard, and they really actually had to try to repent of their sin and not live in sin anymore, and they really actually tried to pray, and when they would fall short, there would be grace upon grace upon grace. Yeah. But it's like Pastor Jay always says, that it wasn't cheap grace. It was accountable, real-life grace, very similar to AA, where you're accepted, you're welcomed, but you're still going to be seen and known and held accountable in a way that brought real transformation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you don't know by now, Katie and I and Pastor Jay, we're big believers in these groups, and we would love to invite you to call your friends up and say, hey, let's start meeting together. And if you need help forming a group, any of us, Pastor Debbie, we would love to help that happen in your life, because we think it's really, really good for you and good for all of us as brothers and sisters in Christ. So, Katie, you ready for the deep part?
I'm ready for the deep part.
All right. We'll say goodbye and join you on the other half of this.
Today, we're taking a little different turn after going through a rather long exploration of basic Christian beliefs. We're going to double down on some good United Methodist practice that is a part of our theological heritage in the United Methodist Church's expression of the Christian faith. In the general rules of the United Societies. And for those of you who are Methodists, you're probably saying, I've heard something about those general rules. And for those of you who aren't, you're probably saying, what in the world is he talking about? And I'll lead us in a little bit. Back in 1739, John Wesley was approached by a small group of men who were, let's say, convicted of their need to escape the wrath to come. That's the way they depicted it. They came into an awareness of their brokenness and wanted guidance from Wesley. And in that, Wesley established a weekly meeting time where accountability was offered, where teaching was made, where encouragement, reflection, questioning came. And as people started flocking to it, can you imagine that people were actually hearing about these groups and wanting to be a part of them, that as they had more and more people, they started finding a structure where they would divide these groups so that the people who were part of groups would split so that they could welcome more people. And then they would split again, always trying to maintain a certain number, under 12, where the group would hold one another accountable, where you couldn't kind of hide in the corner, and where there would be enough intimacy that in a weekly meeting, they would gather to hold one another accountable. And as a part of that process, they had 3 simple rules. And they can best be depicted as to do no harm, to do all the good you can, and to continue to uphold the ordinances of the church or to stay in love with God through Jesus Christ. How one was accountable to those 3 rules were essential to their continued participation in these classes of united societies. Ricky, why do we lose this sense within the Christian faith? Do you think we have?
Oh, I do think we have, and it makes me sad that we have, because I just think that if we are brothers and sisters in Christ, we have a deep responsibility to each other, and to Christ, to help each other walk in faith and to grow in faith. I mean, I put it, in non-religious terms that I believe Christianity is the best life possible. Mm-hmm. And, if I believe that, then I want that for the people around me. And mm-hmm. I want to help people live that life with all that they are. And so I do believe that. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, but wasn't it when they started out that you actually it was mandatory?
Yes.
And that if you didn't, you couldn't go to a worship service?
Exactly.
And I think up into the 50s, the Methodist Church continued the practice of saying that everybody was supposed to be a part of one of these groups. And I think when we stopped that, we really did ourselves a disservice, because I need you guys in my life. I need other people in my life to help me live the best Christ-like possible. And I just think that's such a gift, such a gift.
Whether people are finding isolation in their aloneness or whether they're hiding in plain sight in large groups, there's something to be said about a small group of people who participate in a common journey and hold people accountable. Many would say that Wesley, when he was approached by these men, called upon his background of watching his mother in kitchen fellowships at the church rectory, where not from his dad's leadership in the big church operations, but his mom's operation of how she encouraged other women and later men in kitchen fellowships were the way in which Wesley kind of helped to form these classes and these small groups, that it was really sitting at the knee of his mother that he learned about what it meant to be in real conversation and in accountability with one another. I think that when we started getting so institutionalized that we just thought bigger is better and easy access meant for faster growth, that we really lost a deep sense of meaningful walk with one another. Katie, what's your experience with the general rules and accountability and the faith?
I probably didn't hear of the general rules until much later in my faith walk, but my really early experiences in getting plugged in the church were in early high school with confirmation classes and then taking a disciple Bible study. And it was those smaller groups of Bible study and fellowship that were really significant. And I didn't have that very much in college, but afterwards, working for the Wesley, our small group ministry and our staff that we had was really important. And we talk about accountability now. I think that's something that sometimes people shy away from, but once you've established it, it is so nourishing to your soul just to be able to have people you can go to who in love you can share your whole life with and And so I really was drawn to, the bands and the classes and the small groups that were started under Wesley and that grew from there. And I think a lot of churches have lost some of that, but I think a lot of churches would say, yes, our small group membership, if we counted our small group membership rather than church attendance, sometimes there's a big difference between your small group membership
Yes.
and your church attendance, and which one is more valuable. You might have some different arguments about that. And you see so much transformation because of how people can be more open and more intimate and honest in those. And I've loved really looking at some of the really intense, often questions that Wesley asked, the 22 questions. And I've actually had a lot of fun, modernizing those for college students when I was working at the Wesley and really taking that seriously. And I found a lot of people, rather than shy away from those, tend to really love it. So I don't know why it's died out I think people think they're so busy, but they like it.
I think one of the interesting dynamics, even as we've reinitiated a more intentional process of accountability and spiritual formation groups and small group establishment here, I think that there's several things that we're continuing to fight. And one is that bigger is better kind of thing, that the classes that they would say, our class has 90 people in it.
Yeah.
Our church sanctuary is full on Sunday morning. We have to have multiple services, and, that we do kind of love to count. We love to count. I think on the other side, we live in this increasingly more impersonal world where accessibility is so easily found, and yet isolation tends to come with it. That we really have kind of learned how to have a one-way conversation, and picking and choosing what sources we have so that we just get reinforced what it is that we want to be the reality of things, that we don't have this sort of give and take and this interpersonal depth of relationships that I think are so valuable to our journey, and that we've gotten to have those both things, that bigger is better and that is a more comfortable type of focus, that have torn apart a lot of these small group types of activities. And I think the third factor in that I almost forgot was that nobody wants to be accountable on a weekly basis, that it's not just the numbers from the standpoint of how many are participating, but how often we do this. That now, if you say weekly, people are like, oh, I can't do that weekly. I've got too many other things that are in the way of a weekly thing. Maybe we could do that monthly or quarterly or this type of thing. And I think the struggle for prioritization of time and this sort of isolation similarity kind of thing, along with bigger is better, all three of those things have really torn at the fabric of small group types of ministry. And yet, I would say the biggest change that's happened here at First United Methodist Church in Longview has been the quiet growth of additional accountability in small groups that have sprung forward, and the way that has propelled people deeper into discipleship and expanded their impact more than any other thing that has happened here over the last 8 years. And I'd love to see us as United Methodists recapture that. I'd love to see us as Christians recapture this, not in a bigger, better, my steeple's 5 inches taller than yours. We offer pizza. No, we're going to have sushi for our gathering times. But to have really deeper, more meaningful, small group types of ministry. What about you, Ricky?
I was thinking, both of you, and then Debbie as well, have been friends of mine longer than I have served in this church. And one of the things that I have valued about all of your friendships is how you help me grow. And I treasure that. And I treasure that I have with y'all friendships that I can say, I think this or I think that. And then that's allowed. I mean, that there's space for that. And that's a really growing thing for me. One of my best times in life was way back. And Ann Shearer was our district superintendent. She was one of the first women pastors in our conference and went on to become a bishop. And I babysat her kids. Tricia and I babysat her kids, but we were in a group, and there was Ann. There were people that were pastors at large churches, and then there were some of us who were local pastors, and some of us that were student pastors. When we came together, none of that mattered, and all of that got put aside. And we would work through these questions, and we would help each other. And part of that is when we would call each other for our nonsense, and we would just say, "I'll get over that," and stuff like that. That was a group that also, once a quarter, we went out and did mission work together. Like there was a home for unwed mothers, and we went and did yard work at that building. And so as a group, and I will always treasure that group and that experience because we became equals, and we had this thing about helping each other and growing. A great kind of story about this is with my throat thing, I have to be careful about what I eat. And my speech therapist said to me, no caffeine, just absolutely no caffeine. And so I told that to Katie, and I said, if you ever, because I loved iced tea, I love sweet iced tea. And so I said to Katie, if you ever see me with a glass of tea in my hands, you can knock the tea out of my hands.
She's really looking forward to finding that any way she can,
I've been waiting.
You've been waiting
not
for
so
that
patiently.
But
Ricky's like, no, it's decaf. It's decaf.
But I say that because when I'm around her and we're at lunch and everything, that just makes me smile. And it's just
Because she's watching.
she's watching me like a hawk, and but it's really helped me. And so even in other times when she's not there and I think about getting some sweet tea, I go, oh no, Katie, knock it out of my hands. But
I just run from the back of the restaurant.
but it's simple things like that that help us through life, and to have partners. And so I love it, Jay. I mean, I just love it.
I really think if the church is going to move forward, and the church certainly needs to move forward, it may need to recapture some of its tradition of how we got to be who we are in the best senses of it, while reinterpreting that in a new world. Even where maybe people will not make a commitment of a weekly group, at least find a way to get some people involved in something regularly, monthly, bi-monthly. Start somewhere and start to curb this movement that has pushed us to more shallow and more remote types of connections with one another. I appreciated when Katie was talking about disciple Bible study. Even though I was a very active member of the church that I was a part of when I was working with Exxon. I taught a Sunday school class and had strong relationships. When I took Disciple Bible Study and did that 34-week journey with people, many of whom I didn't know very well, they were a very mixed group of people from different extremes of the church, to take a journey together like that and to share honestly with one another created an intimacy and a closeness that quickly surpassed the longer standing relationships I had within my Sunday school class, softball team, and others, because it was intentional, it was regular, and it was vulnerable in that way. And being vulnerable and sharing openly in a small group is a powerful, and impactful thing. And I've wanted to share that with other people. I think another challenge we've had with small groups is that people will become a part of a small group, but please don't ask me to lead one. Don't ask me to take leadership in that. And one of the amazing things about our heritage was everyone was developed into some form of leadership, that you couldn't remain in a group if you weren't willing at some point to lead a group. And I think that we should have a sense of expectancy and nurture that leads people to know you don't have to lead multiple groups, but that you should be able to not just be a full participant, but be able to grow into leadership in some way, because we all have the ability to lead.